What's going on, everybody? We are back. We got episode number 143 of the Club and Sub podcast. Tonight, Danny and myself are going to be talking UFC London. Tom Aspinall making his return, taking on Marcin Tybura. It's a really fun card, afternoon card. Can't ask for much more than that. Before we get into it, guys, if you like the show, drop a like and subscribe. Drop a comment for the algorithm, share, all that good stuff. Obviously, follow me on Twitter, John and MMA Fox, Lags at Danny_Lags. And before we do anything else, we should break down last week's card. Total cluster fire for me. Worst card of the year for me. It's been a rough year so far, got to be honest. Some bad beats, but also just some bad bets. I was just telling Lags before, historically I've done very well on big bets. This year I'm doing very poorly on them so far. Not a lot to say about it other than just got to be better. And I guess, we'll turn things around. We always do, but it's been a rough fucking year so far. So last week, biggest bet of the night, Holly Holm at 4.5 units on her. Disaster. In terms of thinking about the fight, it might have been a bad bet. That's very possible. The sizing definitely should have been smaller in retrospect. I still think it's hard to glean a lot from that fight. On minutes, she outlanded her like I thought she would. She outcontrolled her like I thought she would. She won round one unanimously. At the same time, though, she did look old and slow. And at 41, that's to be expected. That choke Myra hit is the same choke Ketlin almost hit her with last year. And we saw Myra try to set it up 2 other times in that fight. So, when thinking about my read, I'm just like, well, it's hard to really say, I don't think I don't think I had value on the line. The question is it a bad bet? I don't know. How often does Myra sub her? I don't really know, but I'm inclined to think Myra was pretty clearly the side. I saw some people saying it was a meme, but honestly, after seeing Ketlin catch her in that same sub and then Myra do it, you can say what you want. Myra's dangerous. We always knew that. I thought Holly would be a bit more aware of it. Whatever. Bad bet. Disaster. Bet Basil Hafez. That was a great bet. Didn't hit, but plus 475 was an excellent bet. I bet Ottman is Aitar. Bad bet. Ottman's a bum. I probably in the future just shouldn't be betting guys that I've been trying to fade their entire careers, just as a general, rule of thumb. Tucker Lutz, I think it was a decent bet. I don't really know. Look, he was in a position to win the fight down the stretch, and I had a good number on him, but again, he just kind of got outlasted. I'll tell you this, I did not have on my bingo card Lutz winning round 1 and losing round 3. I felt fairly certain the cardio dynamic would be the other way around. And instead, Melsick, he showed some improvements. I didn't mind Lutz's approach, but obviously it didn't work out. And then Estela Nunes, disaster. Not a bad, look, just completely fucking random, but that seems to be the way of the year so far. Dollar CLV on that, and she dislocates her elbow in the first minute of the fight. I also had the over in Park and Duraev. Kind of weird to think about because round 1, I was like, this is the perfect pace for an over here. Duraev's, he's swinging big shots. Nothing's really getting close. Tempo's low. And that was kind of the case for the first half of round 2 too. And then it seemed like a light clicked in Park's head. And he was just like, okay, now it's my turn. It went from out of nowhere, Park just kind of stepping back to okay, foot on the gas. I'm going to go forward and just empty the clip here. Obviously with that dynamic, I think it was I don't think I got unlucky. It was just interesting because the pacing went from very conducive to the over to suddenly being rapid high pace and Park coming at him like a cyborg. Fucking disaster of a card. I lost 9 units on it. Got to be better. Not really much else to say other than just take it on the chin. But you know what? Everything will work out. It always does. We'll get it back this year, but hopefully this week. How'd you do, Legs?
So I'll pick up pretty much where you left off. Well, I mentioned the Nunez fight a little bit again, like we talked about. I had a half unit there plus 220. The Park fight. Those were the other 2 bets I had on the night. I had Park money line, which was a great bet at minus 155. But then I also played the round 3 decision at plus 150, which again, pre-fight looked, good number and everything. And I thought how the fight was playing out, like you touched on, I thought it was looking good. And then he just kind of just turned it up in the second round and finished them, with I think about a minute left. Maybe 30 seconds. Yeah. So I would say I just should have sized on the money line more and just not even went ahead on the round 3 decision. It's just tough looking at that hindsight.
It's funny you say that because I told a lot of people last week who liked late Park props that I just didn't really agree with it because I was like, Park's not really, he's high volume, but he never really looks to like hunt the finish unless he's grappling.
Yep.
And then it was just like, he literally looked insane coming at him there. Honestly, great performance from Park. He's really good. I like Jin Young Park. But yeah, I mean, bad bets all around. Hopefully we get it back this week though. We got 15 fights starting at noon on Saturday, which means it's breakfast cocktail season. First fight of the night, we got Jafel Filo taking on Daniel Perez. The line currently, Jafel Filo -120, come back on Perez +100. Lags, any thoughts here?
I think Perez is going to be an interesting addition to the flyweight division. But I've just seen like a couple holes in the game that I'm just not particularly fond of, that being the low volume nature and his defensive wrestling. But I think in general, this being lined a pretty close fight, I think makes sense. I think Filo's slight wrestling upside. I think it's fairly close on the feet. Not too many strong thoughts myself.
I tend to lean to the Perez side on the tape, just exclusively on the tape. Like, I kind of agree with what you're saying, but like, I think Perez, while he's fresh, is a bit cleaner of a boxer, maybe a bit better of a wrestler. What concerns me, as you touched on, I don't really trust Perez's cardio, and nor do I really trust Filo's, to be quite honest. But
I was going to say I didn't mention the cardio, but it's okay.
Yeah,
I mentioned the volume in the takedown defense, but yeah.
Yeah, but the thing that's in my head with it and why I haven't bet Perez is, I mean, I think you got to give Filo some respect where it's due. Not for the Mokaev fight necessarily. Like, who fucking cares about that fight? But he has fought like a pretty high level of competition for a guy making a second UFC fight. Obviously, he beat Vinicius Salvador. He's fought Bruno Correa regionally. He fought a bunch of like decent Brazilian guys in the Brazilian regional scene, like a much better level of competition than what Perez has fought. Perez obviously had very close fight with Hernandez in his Contender Series fight. But I mean, other than that, he's basically just been like, one of these like Call of Duty pros creating a new account and just pub stomping on stream, like guys in the Brazilian regional scene who just can't hang with him. But I do like Perez's tools. He's just old, and yeah, like you mentioned, defensive wrestling kind of a concern.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me, like looking at the tape, like it looks nice, it looks flashy, but like against it's the substance really. It's like, who's he fighting? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, I completely agree.
So I'm fine with passing, but I lean the Perez side as well.
Moving on, we got Bruno Brazil taking on Shauna Bannon. Brazil -150, come back on Bannon +130. It's funny because like when I was taping this, I taped Bannon first because I just had no idea about her game at all. And I came away kind of seeing what I expected to see, which is I think Shauna Bannon is really bad, which is kind of what I expected from a 5-0 Irish fighter who's been fighting nobodies in Invicta. I actually think the best part of Bannon's game is kind of her jiu-jitsu. Like, I think she does a decent job on back takes, but her striking seems to have not a whole lot of process on it. No power, doesn't really sit down in her shots at all. I think she can be grappled offensively. So after seeing all of that, I was like, I'm definitely going to bet Brazil, but I went to tape Brazil and like, I do think Brazil has the tools to cover this if she takes an intelligent approach. Like, if Brazil comes out and tries to grapple her, I think she beats her fairly easily. Like, I think she could dominate Bannon from top position. What I worry is Brazil likes to strike. And I got to say, Bruno Brazil might have like the worst defense I've ever seen in like the UFC. Like the Denise Gomez fight, I remember like thinking about that and being like, oh yeah, it was an impressive performance from Gomez. But then you go back and watch it and it's like, she literally just threw the same overhand right, like 20 straight times. And Brazil, I don't know if she didn't see it coming or just didn't know what to do, but it found her chin every single time. And, obviously her stance with the hands very low, almost like a pseudo karate stance, leaves her vulnerable to those shots. You need to have like head movement and distance management for that. And it doesn't seem like she has either of those things either. And so like, I'm thinking about this fight and I'm like, well, can Bannon take advantage of that? I don't really know. I don't think Bannon's very threatening as a striker. So I think the answer is probably not, but it was concerning enough that I don't really want to lay juice on Brazil. Still though, I mean, if you put a gun to my head here and told me to pick a side that will look like value hindsight, it would probably be Brazil, but pass for me. What do you think, Legs?
Yeah, similarly, I did take Bannon as well first because again of the unknown, and I come away with kind of the same things you did. Brazil's striking defense not there. I think she can be held down as well if Bannon took a wrestling approach. No, again, not strong thoughts. I think this could go either way. Either girl getting up on top, having good control time. Yeah, not really strong conviction on myself. Anything from you? No.
Sitting right there with you. Moving on, a fight we both have a strong opinion on. I'll throw it to you here first. We got Chris Duncan taking on Yanal Ashmoes. Duncan minus 142 at Kern. Ashmoes comeback plus 122. What are your thoughts here?
Well, for starters, I mean, everybody, talking about the Patterson fight first, knocking him out. Myself passing on that fight, I passed on Yanel just because I thought his wrestling in general was pretty mid, and the guy's got an overhand on the feet, really. His striking's not too depth. And so now he's lined pretty close with Chris Duncan, who I think can grind on him, can wrestle him, has the better cardio over 15. I think, honestly, he's the better striker of the two, even though he's just pretty hittable himself. So I like Duncan in the spot for unit play at minus 145.
Yeah, I played Duncan pretty big. First of all, from a market perspective here, we have Ashmoes going from plus 250 against Patterson to now not quite pick him, but plus 120, like very, very closely aligned with Chris Duncan, which, what I'll say is, people can say all day the line against Patterson was off, and it may well have been, but a 1 minute KO tells us really nothing. Patterson really got put out by his head hitting the mat there. And the fact that the market thought he was plus 240 there, and now we're turning around and saying this is a closely lined fight, really just doesn't make much sense, especially when the market favored Duncan against Slava 2 fights ago, had him competitively lined with Charlie Campbell, and had him favored against Omar Morales. Like all 3 of those guys I would make decent sized favorites against, maybe not Slava because, could probably grapple him, but you know what I mean. I think all of them are much better strikers than he is. Yeah, I look at this fight and I think, what people don't like about Duncan is the fact that it's the same thing I didn't like about him before the Omar fight when I bet Omar against him. And I still don't like it about him. He doesn't really move his head great in the pocket, and he can be hurt. Putting him out here wouldn't really be a shocking outcome to me. At the same time, though, the guy has shown a great recoverability when hurt. Like, you really have to kill him to get him out of there. And in terms of like their actual abilities, I think Duncan is a lot better than, pretty much everywhere. He's defaulted to grappling at times in his career, but it's been against really bad grapplers. And we've seen average grapplers like close to dominate him in that realm. I really do not think, is a very good wrestler here. And I think that is a plausible path for Duncan. Like, I think if Duncan takes the path he did against Morales, he's going to have a lot of success. But even standing, he just wings these wild hooks. And if he can't find you, he just kind of defaults to throwing spinning shit at you. Like, it's just, you and I were talking about it earlier in the week, but it's just stuff that's very easy to read. It might work against lower level competition. It's not going to work against guys who actually know what they're doing striking. And when they are in the pocket, I would argue, is as easy, if not easier to hit than Duncan is. So I look at it and I got Chris Duncan, who's more experienced. He's fought better guys. I think he's the better pocket boxer. I think he's got a big grappling edge here. And I think the market is massively overcorrecting off of a 1 minute KO against a completely untested guy in Justin Patterson here. I feel like Duncan's the more skilled fighter everywhere. I think he should be about minus 200. Look, he could get bonked for sure, but I think short of that, I think it's going to be tough for to win minutes. So I have 3 units on Duncan as here. We'll see what happens. Moving on, Ketlin Vieira taking on Pannie Kianzad. Current line here, Vieira minus 140, comeback on Kianzad plus 120. I'm like swearing off women's juice after last week. And just like in general, my entire life of betting women's juice never seems to go well.
Smart.
Yeah.
Listen, I advocate for that as well.
I think it's the best decision, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't even know why we even bet women's fights, but whatever. It's a whole different can of worms. And I do have a women's bet this week. But I do sort of think there might be value on the Vieira side. I know some pretty sharp people that are betting Pannie, and I guess like fundamentally I get it. While they're in boxing range, it should be a competitive fight. Pannie does have better striking metrics. Her boxing is a bit tighter, but I think that's like the only edge she has. Like I don't see a lot of finishing upside for Pannie in this fight. Even in boxing exchanges, I kind of suspect Ketlin's going to be landing harder than she is. Like if either one of them was to hurt the other, I think it's going to be Ketlin. If either was to win on power optics, I think it'll be Ketlin. In the clinch, I think there's a huge edge there for Ketlin. We saw Raquel basically abuse her in those positions. I don't really see why Ketlin can't either. And look, and when we've seen Pannie, when she gets put on bottom, she just has nothing there. Like if Ketlin, I will say, Ketlin doesn't proactively pursue grappling much. She only attempts about 3.5 takedowns per 15 minutes, but 1 takedown is almost definitely around here. 2 takedowns is the fight. with that dynamic, and when you're the bigger fighter who hits harder, it's just very hard for me to say being sub 60% implied makes a lot of sense here. I think Ketlin like 65% makes a bit more sense. What do you think?
I mean, I think the line more or less is fine. Like I just more or less came out of this thinking that the size and the physicality of Ketlin's probably gonna win her out in the clinch.
Yeah.
To your point with the takedowns, that's kind of where my big pause is in this fight. And like to the people like who got in at paying at like plus 170, plus 180, like if Ketlin doesn't come out here shooting takedowns aggressively, like I think that could look like value. But yeah, I think more or less line's fine-ish. I expect a clinch heavy fight.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm not betting it. Moving on, I'll leave it with you here. Brian Barberina, Mahmoud Muradov. Current line, Muradov minus 350. Come back on Barb plus 285. What do you got here?
I parlayed Muradov at minus 280. I think Barb's pretty fucked outside of just outlasting Muradov and out cardioing him down the stretch. I think Barb's there to be hit. I think Muradov's just going to snipe him down the pocket. I think he has a wrestling advantage if he ends up going to it, but I don't foresee that. I think he probably keeps it standing and just keeps it tight, clean, boxes Barb's face off, honestly.
Yeah, I did the exact same thing, and I'm pretty sure it's the exact same parlay that you
I think it is, yeah. Club itself parlay, ship it for the boys.
Yeah. I don't really what's funny? When I saw the booking, my initial assumption was Muradov's coming down to 70. Because I'm like, Barberina's a small 70. Like, he's not a big guy at all for 70. Like, why would he be going up to middleweight? That wouldn't make any sense. But he is going up to middleweight, it turns out, which, again, doesn't make terribly much sense to me. And it's like, if you wanted to go up to take advantage of, like, physical attributes, going up and fighting a taller guy who's longer and also faster, like, it basically nullifies all your physical attributes right there. Look, I've bet Barb here and there, even in his most recent run, but I do sort of think he's kind of reaching the end of his rope here. We have Barberina having competitive fights with Matt Brown, this version of Robbie Lawler, Darian Weeks, who I bet him against, and I had to sweat that. Like that was not something.
He's been fighting low-level guys outside of Robbie Lawler, really.
Dude, yeah, and even Robbie's ancient, man. And Robbie was teeing him up Brown until he gassed out, Yeah, exactly. Yep. Barb seems like he's on the way out, and now he's taking on a fight here with Muradov, who, look, I have not always been the highest on Muradov ever. I think the guy has some exploitable flaws here. In particular, I really think his defensive grappling is suspect. But like Brian Barberina, I don't think he's ever shot a takedown in his career. He's not going to exploit that. Barberina just kind of wants to come forward and pressure. They're going to be in a big cage. Muradov's 2 inches taller with 3.5 inches of reach on him. He's the faster fighter. He's more accurate and he's more defensively sound. Like, I look at the fight, I feel like the only real upside on the Barb side here is maybe he can take enough damage and keep coming that he gasses, Muradov out here. I'm skeptical that even he can do that, though. Guys hit different at 85 than they do at 70. And I don't think Barberina's chin has been looking great anyway in recent years. I just think, he has no grappling equity. He's going to lose striking minutes unless Morado death gasses. I think Morado should have this fairly easily covered. I don't know if you looked at it, Lax. I took this early in the week. I took the under. Yeah.
It's not bad. Yep.
What is that now? I took it plus 100.
It was like minus
115, minus 105. It's still, I think it's still pretty good. I mean,
see, my only issue, and I'm trying to stay away from those, and that's what I was going to get to. I'm trying to stay away from the unders where, in my opinion, it's mostly like one-sided on the finish. Like, I don't think Barb's finishing Morado, pretty much.
But if he wins, he probably has to, right? It's going to be pretty tough for him to win a decision.
I guess. I don't know. I lean more so on the, if he was going to win, he would probably, etch the volume, he's competitive on the volume, not so much knocking him out. But yeah, no, that's why I would lean the under. I think it's Muradov skewed.
Yeah, fair enough. But yeah, I mean, we both like Muradov here. I think he's going to cruise. Moving on, Mick Parkin taking on Jamal Pogus. I bet Pogus pretty big. Not big. I have 2 units on him at minus 140. Pogs. Whatever. Pogus.
Hey, you got a bet on him. Come on.
I do have a bet on him. Jamal Pogues. I have 2 units on him, minus 140. I honestly think you could still bet him for a unit at the current price. I guess I've seen a lot of Parkin love, and look, I have 2 units on him, so obviously I don't think he's a lock or anything like that. But I guess I don't really understand where the Parkin enthusiasm is coming from. this is a guy who went off against Eduardo Neves on Contenders as a plus 200 underdog. Prior to that, he was 5-0 and hadn't fought a single fighter above 500. Literally, a lot of 0-win fighters and nobody with a 500 record. Neves himself was 5-0, but I mean, the guy's an F grappler, and even there, Neves was tagging him up. Now he's fighting a guy in Pogues who people seem to hate, I guess, because he's a former light heavyweight, which to me, it's kind of an odd thing because like Jamal Pogues, for a guy who has only one fight in the UFC, has actually fought like a pretty high level of competition regionally. The guy, he fought Taylor Johnson, he fought Jordan Young, he fought Tim Hiley, he fought Alex Polizzi. He obviously dominated Josh Parisian. From a market perspective, Pogues was minus 350 against Josh Parisian. Like, how would Mick Parkin be lined with Josh Parisian? Like, are people like, oh, they're implying that he'd be like minus 250, minus 300, which to me is crazy. And like, you look at Pogues and his style, I mean, I keep hearing about the Parkin grappling here, but like Pogues is a guy who's averaging like 4 takedowns per 15 minutes. Yeah, he's looked tired at the end of fights, but not as death gas as you'd expect heavyweights to. Like, what other heavyweights average that amount of takedowns? Curtis Blades. That's the list right there. I'm not saying that Pogues is as good as Curtis Blades by any means, but the point that I'm illustrating here is volume wrestling at heavyweight is a legit cheat code in this sport. Like, tell me all day about how he used to be a light heavyweight. Cool. Josh Parisian's 265, and he was hoisting him around in there. I know the refrain to that would be, Josh Parisian's a bad grappler. It's like, he's not that bad a grappler. Yeah, he got dominated by Dontale Mays, who's like a top 20 heavyweight, but other than that, like, no one else has really out-grappled him like that. I think in the striking, I think Pogues is better pretty clearly. He's clearly got faster hands. He's a much faster striker. I think Parkin hits harder and could put him out, but I'd expect Pogues to really just tee off on him like early in this fight. Parkin's easy to hit and he's slow. In the grappling, again, like I keep hearing about Parkin's grappling, but it's like, who has this guy grappled? Like, he doesn't come from a grappling background originally. Like, yes, the gym he's at now has some good heavyweight grapplers in DeFries and Aspinall, but like Jamal Pogues has been grappling since he was like 8 years old. The guy's a black belt who comes from a wrestling and grappling background and has been doing this his whole life. Go watch him fight Alex Polizzi regionally. That fight's at 205, and they grappled at an absolutely blistering pace for 17 minutes, really, to Polizzi subbed him. But, he was counter grappling that entire fight, working out of bad positions, getting top position himself. And I promise everybody watching the show, Alex Polizzi's offering a lot more dangerous grappling and a lot more clever grappling than what he's getting from Mick Parkin. 100%. Like, it's not even close, the level of grappling between Polizzi and Parkin. And so when I hear like, oh, Parkin could dominate him from top, it's like, well, I guess it's possible Parkin's just too big for him. And if he gets on top of him, he could dominate him there. Like, I'm not going to say that's not possible. It is. But I don't think Parkin's like as much bigger as him as people think. Parkin's got an inch of height on him and 2 inches of reach. Like, we're not talking about like a 6'6" heavyweight who's 265 against, a 6 foot, 230 pound heavyweight. It's like 255 versus 249 and 1 inch of height separating them. So I'd be pretty surprised if that's the case. And again, like I said, Pogues has the more decorated background in jiu-jitsu and wrestling here. Even like in terms of cardio, Parkins hasn't been past round 2 in his professional career. The one fight he went into round 2 against Ashley Pollard, where, by the way, he got mounted twice by a 6-9 fighter. But that one fight, he looked dead gassed at the end of that fight. Whereas Pogues, again, say he's gassy if you want, but the guy's landed six takedowns in his last fight. We've seen Pogues come out there and win around dead gassed out. We haven't seen that from Parkin. So, like, I look at the fight, and I sort of feel like Pogues is better everywhere. Like, my biggest concern here is biggest concerns, it's in London. Like, that's a bit of a concern, both from the judging and like, I feel like people underestimate the changing time zones. Like, it's not an insignificant thing. We give a certain percentage for home field in other sports, but for whatever reason, we just act like it's not a thing in MMA, and it probably is. So, like, that favors him, obviously. And then, look, we haven't seen Parkin for a year, and the guy is training with Aspinall and DeFry. Like, I think it's a reasonable expectation that he's going to be better than the last time we saw him. But even with that, like I said, this guy's fought nothing but janitors. Like literally the worst of the worst competition. And Pogues has fought like real fighters. If anybody I'd expect to underperform their tape here, it's Parkin. And considering I like Pogues more just based off his tape anyway, I feel like you have to make him like minus 200 in this fight. Yeah, I like Pogus a fair amount. I have 2 units on him. What do you think, Lags?
Yeah, I guess the only real counter argument I'll have to the Pogues side is really that if Parkin gets on top early, like first round, not just like in general, just, I think first round is where I'd be more skeptical. But like anything past that, like I don't think this guy's going to have wrestling success. I don't think he's going to have like top time success that we talked about. It's just unproven. It's just a massive
Let me ask
question.
you something though. Like what? So like, other than like I mentioned, the size thing, because I think we both agree that could be a thing that maybe allows him to get consolidate top position. But if that doesn't, is there any available tape that suggests Parkin is even like a good grappler, much less like a very good grappler?
No, I don't think. I think it's just size.
Like I saw someone say he did all the right things against Neves. It's like Neves fell down and literally just shelled up. Like there was no right things. It was like, oh, okay, you're gonna let me put my hooks in. Oh, he still only put one hook in and subbed it with one hook in. Like there is nothing to take from that fight. So
there's not much to take from any of his tape, to be honest.
That's what I'm saying.
And that's what's tough. Yeah, I know.
Dude,
tough.
Like this guy is fun. No, like how often I saw someone say, oh, they're making this as a setup fight for Mick Parkin. And I'm like, what? Yeah. This isn't Tom Aspinall. Like, who the fuck do people think Mick Parkin is? He's not some crazy heavyweight prospect. Like, no one was like, oh man, Mick Parkin's fighting on the Contender Series this year. Let me tell you about this guy. Like, there's no setup fight for Mick Parkin.
He's just getting a fight because he's in Aspinall's camp.
Yes, he's a role player.
On the prelims.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yes. Mick Parkin is a fucking role player. Like, that's what's going on here.
I love it, John. I love it.
Anyway, enough of that. I don't want to get too passionate because honestly, if this cold run keeps happening, it's gonna look. Someone's gonna clip one of these days, and it's gonna look real fucking ugly.
Jamal's gonna be mounted in 30 seconds.
I can't wait. You know that's gonna happen. Armbar, Mick Parkin armbar a minute into this fight. You know it's coming. Anyway,
speaking of armbars.
Oh yeah, good one. Oh yeah, you did talk about this fight already.
Yeah.
So throw it to you then. We got Joel Alvarez taking on Mark Jacasey. Interesting fight. Alvarez price getting up there. He's now -190. Comeback Jacasey +165. What are your thoughts here?
I don't really have any like condescending takes from where the market is moving. Like I get why people would like Alvarez. I feel like in general, DKC's a bit of a head case. I think Alvarez can push him early. I think he can find a finish, but like at the same time, I think that's where he's not like drawing dead, but like, would you be happy if this goes 15 minutes and you're sitting with a -180 Joel Alvarez ticket? No. So like, if I'm looking at it, I'd rather touch an ITD if you didn't get those early numbers. But it's a pass for me. I don't think DKC's going to have a ton of wrestling success personally.
Yeah, you know what? You know what's funny is I was pretty sure I was going to play Alvarez because like in my head before, I actually didn't even look at it till this morning because like in my head I was like, I'm betting Alvarez here, and then the number just got nuked, and I was like, oh yeah, should I even waste my time taping it? Like
right.
If I was more like I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna bet -175 on Joel Alvarez. But like I looked at it and I talked to Gugabe briefly about it, and he had some decent points. And like, man, I do still think that Alvarez has a lot more finishing equity here. But kind of to your point, like what you just said, if it goes 15, like, do you feel good about Alvarez? Like the guy, like Jacasey can definitely take him down. I'm not sure he should take him down. But like, let's just say he does. Like, I don't think Joel Alvarez has like ADCC level jiu-jitsu. Like, he's got a slick armbar game, but that's it. He's like the Jalija Stoliarenko of men's MMA. And how many guard subs a year do we see in men's MMA? Literally, like what? Somewhere between 10 and 15. It's not many. It is really a low number. So it's like how high can you even cap that? And so I do think there is like some theoretical upside for Jacasey wrestling here. Although I kind of sort of think, and tell me if you disagree, that Jacasey probably won't wrestle at all.
Yeah, I think it'd be smart to not. But I actually think that's kind of the biggest advantage I would say he has. Even though like people would look at it like in the wrestling, I feel like if he keeps it standing, like Alvarez is hittable himself. He keeps his head on the center line. Like,
dude, go
ahead.
That's the interesting thing to me. So like, I had recalled being like more impressed with Alvarez's striking than I was going back and watching.
It was like, only the Moises fight, really.
The Moises fight, yeah, he came at him like a fucking bull seeing red and just went off and finished him. But beyond that, like when he's been forced to strike in extended exchanges, he hasn't looked very like he's long, but like he doesn't have much defense at all. I don't know. Like, I'm not at all convinced he's going to easily outstrike Jacasey. Like, whatever you want to say about Mark Jacasey, this is a guy who he was reasonably competitive on the feet with Rafael Fiziev. Like, he only got out Rafael Fiziev. Sorry. He only got outlanded by 10 strikes in that fight. You know, obviously was competitive with Michael Johnson and was competitive in a decision with Jakar Close. Like, Jacasey's not a bad striker, and he's a crazy athlete with decent power against a guy like Alvarez, who's very, very easy to hit. Like, I don't know. It's a weird dynamic. And I kind of think Jacasey ripping leg kicks here could be like a pretty significant thing in this fight, because I don't think Alvarez is going to check him. And so I haven't bet Jacasey because I'm still not really sure I want to, just because if you think one fighter has a huge edge in finishing equity, it's pretty hard to get to the other side of that unless you think they have like a massive edge in a decision. And I'm just not sure I think that. So I don't know if I'll bet him, but I do kind of think, you know, everybody piling in on Alvarez here might be a bit premature and might just be kind of missing the fact that like Mark Jacasey is a more experienced guy who's been mostly like the two really good guys that Alvarez have fought have dumpstered him. Demir beat him with no problem at all, and Arman just destroyed him. Obviously, Mark's not on that level, but other than that, he hasn't really fought anybody. He fought Moises and blitzed him. You know? I don't know. There's not a lot of data on Alvarez. So it's a pass for me, I think, unless this keeps blowing out. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, what I will say is interesting because I noticed a couple of days ago at least, it looks like people are hitting the Alvarez decision line now.
That's interesting. What is his decision line?
5-1.
Yeah, I don't hate it.
It opened it was at 650.
I actually sort of think that might be. I mean, it's definitely better value than a submission line for sure.
Well, GTD's plus 180, John. Tempting you.
That is tempting me. That is very much tempting me.
Actually, hear me out. Well, not even just that, but like the over 1.5 is minus 135.
Really?
Bovada, minus 135 on Bovada. Minus 160 on Betway.
Does Bovada exist? Like, I feel like I know nobody with a Bovada account.
Okay, so maybe not. So we'll go with minus 150, minus 160. How about that? There's literally only one odds site that has the over 1.5.
That's still not bad for 1.5 in a lightweight fight, especially because Alvarez is going to be the guy that dictates whether or not it hits the ground. Like, or not Alvarez, Jacasey. Alvarez isn't going to take Jacasey down. That's kind of interesting. Moving on though, Danny Roberts, Johnny Parsons. Current line here has Roberts swung the favorite. Roberts minus 118, Parsons minus 102. I could only bet Roberts here. I have a bit of trepidation on the Roberts side just because, I mean, let's be honest, he has looked shot to shit his last two fights. Granted, the level of competition he fought in those two fights, like Jack Della Maddalena and Francisco Trinaldo, is considerably higher than Johnny Parsons. Like, both of those guys are big minuses against Parsons. But still, I didn't like the way he reacted to shots against Trinaldo. You know, Trinaldo hasn't been hurting guys for years, and he was wobbling him left and right in that fight. And then he just looked like a husk of himself against Della Maddalena. But at the same time, man, I look at Johnny Parsons, and he just seems like a shitty TIE fighter to me. You know, he kind of beat Renfro just basically off of outlasting Renfro's like bombs till Renfro kind of ran out of gas. I don't really think skill-wise he's better than Roberts anywhere. I think Roberts is the better striker. Potentially has some grappling equity. Obviously, he's the more tested fighter. It's just a question of whether or not I really want to trust Danny Roberts after those last two fights, and I'm not sure I do. Haven't really decided, but I lean the Roberts side. What do you think?
Honestly, I could only bet the under here.
What is the under?
Minus 140. Under 2.5.
Parsons did apparently come back from like serious concussion issues. So I mean, there is some.
But yeah, no, I more or less agree with you as well. Like, I think Danny's a better striker here. I think for the most part, Parsons just brings power. I don't think he's that great. I think he's fairly low volume. But yeah, Robert's chin isn't quite there as well. So I think the under 2.5. I think both guys could crack. I think both guys could finish there. Yeah,
I do, and I hear hot chocolate's great in London this time of year. So
could be, John.
Moving on, Davey Grant taking on Daniel Marcos. Lags, what are your thoughts here? We got Marcos.
He's steaming out now to minus 150, minus 160 now. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah,
that's
minus 150 Marcos. I bet online. Comeback plus 130. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was going to start off with, it seems, it's just weird to me, I guess, that a lot of people are like confident on the Marcos side. I just feel like this is going to be a banger on the feet. I think Marcos is generally unproven against better level competition. He has good leg kicks, good power. I favor him on durability as well. And that's kind of really the big thing here with Grant. It's like, where's he at durability-wise as well? But yeah, I lean the Marcos side, but I wouldn't be looking to lay like -140, -150. No.
Yeah. It's the kind of fight where like I really want to bet Davey here. Just because I'm not going to, just because I do sort of think like I kind of think Marcos is probably a fraud, more likely than not. You know, you look at his regional tapes meeting list, it's all like 4+ years ago against low-level Peruvian nothings. And then he fights Brandon Lewis on Contender Series. And Lewis is just, let's be honest, he's a manlet who basically had his leg disabled 3 minutes in. And considering he's a wrestler, that pretty much killed any equity he had to win that fight on the ground. And then he just got picked apart. I mean, he was 4 inches shorter with giving up like 5 inches of reach. It was just easy work for Marcos. And even despite that, Marcos looked gassed to shit 11 minutes into that fight, like completely dead gassed, not even really fighting at a crazy pace. And then
that was his first fight after the layoff.
It's true. It is true. But then he fights Simon Oliveira last fight. And like, look, good performance. I'm not going to say it wasn't, but like Simon Oliveira basically spent that entire fight trying to shoot from 10 feet out, getting easily stuffed and then throwing spinning back fists till he gassed out. Like that was the entire fight. Marcos easily defending.
It was great.
Yeah, I played Oliveira. It was horrible.
Sorry, Todd.
He literally was shoot that takedown, get stuff, throw 2 spinning back fists, get peppered a couple times, rinse, wash, and repeat till he was dead gassed and lost. And like my point, I bring this up only to point out that like I feel like any UFC fighter handles that version of Simon Oliveira fairly easily.
Davey Grant, yeah.
So and now it's like now he's and now he's fighting Davey Grant, who it's like. I mean, Davey, as of a couple, his last 2 fights were competitive fights with Chito Vera that he lost, or his last 2 losses, and a split decision with Adrian Yanez. And if those were his last 2 fights, I would like full send Grant at +130 here because like I think there are serious issues with Marcos's game. I still have questions about his wrestling. We haven't seen a good grappler get on top of him. I think he's very available to hit, and I have big questions about his gas tank. But those aren't Grant's last 2 fights. His last 2 fights were Louis Smolka, who's no longer in the UFC, who was taking him till the brink until Grant magically with 3 leg kicks basically just disabled Smolka in round 3 and finished him. And then Rafael Sunsao, who was shot to shit and was in a retirement fight and was a cage grab away from winning that fight before he got reverse triangle. Like both of those fights to me are very bad looks for Grant. And then you combine that with the fact that he's 38 years old and he's been dropped a bunch of times in the last 5 years. And his chin looks like it's getting worse. And it's just like the floor on Grant is so fucking low here. Like what is his upside is maybe slight favorite, but his floor is he's washed and is like +400. Like have to just pass here. Moving on though, we got Lerone Murphy taking on Josh Culibao. Interesting fight. Murphy current line is at -130. Comeback on Culibao +110. I don't really like betting on these kind of fights. Hold on. Jesus, this cold's killing me. But I actually do sort of think there might be value on Murphy, primarily just because I don't think Culibao is going to come out here and look to wrestle Murphy. And, well, even if he does, I'm not sure how much success he'll have. And if he doesn't, I do think Culibao is kind of big moment reliant. You know, Murphy, he's a good boxer and he keeps a pretty heavy pace, whereas Culibao, he's not a bad boxer, but he is reliant on moments. Like the guy has never really shown an ability to keep a high output in fights. So like, I kind of think he's going to need to do that to Murphy, and I trust Murphy's durability. So yeah, I mean, I just ultimately think it's going to mostly stand, and Murphy's very likely to be the busier fighter here. And I just don't, you know, I know Culibao's hurt a fair amount of guys, but I don't think he's nearly as likely to hurt Murphy here. So I favor Murphy a decent bit, but I'm probably going to pass just because it's a striking fight. What do you think?
I actually played Murphy for a unit and a half at -140. As John is coughing up as he gets that bet.
Yeah, no, I don't mind. I've thought about it, honestly.
But yeah, I just don't think there's going to be a lot of grappling success at all for Culibao. So I think -140 on Murphy's pretty good.
It's like, even if there is, right? Like, let's say Culibao takes him down. It's like the guys who have really given Murphy the business on the mat. It's like Amir Khani, Takugov, Santos, all guys who are either much better wrestlers or just much better grapplers than Culibao is.
Much more BJJ guys. Mix it in there as
well.
Well,
not Takugov. He's just a layer.
Right, yeah.
He's a fucking rat.
Be gone. Be gone.
Yeah, kick him the fuck out.
Yeah.
Moving on, though, I'll throw it to you. Jai Herbert for Ziam. What are your thoughts?
This is an interesting fight. And if I'm not mistaken, Ziam open dog.
I bet him dog.
There you go. That's probably what I would have done if I taped this one earlier. But yeah, I think line more or less where it's at. Fine. I think Ziam honestly is the better striker of the two. Herbert's just the bigger hitter of the two. And I think all the grappling upsides with Ziam. So yeah, minus 150 for me. Ziam I think makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, it's kind of like a mirror match. So it's like on the one hand, I could see someone making like an argument for Herbert here, but at the same time, it's funny. Before I taped it, I looked at it and I was like, Herbert's fought some good guys. Like his losses are all against good guys. But then you go and you look at those losses and it's like Moicano dumpstered him, like not a competitive fight. The Trinaldo fight, I mean, Trinaldo dominated him for the first half of the fight, then got hurt bad, but then just knocked him out in round 3. Like Topuria, Herbert had one singular big moment and then got knocked out in round 2. Like he's not ever really winning minutes against these guys. And then like you go and look at like his last 2 wins or his draw with Klein and his win against Nelson, and it's like he got outlanded at distance by both of those guys. Like that is a really bad look. Like whatever else you want to say about it, like that is not great. And he has bad durability and he's like terrible off his back. So that, then you look at Ziam and it's like, yeah, Ziam's flawed. He's also tall and long. I think striking should be competitive, but I think Ziam's got a lot more KO equity here. As you mentioned, if someone's going to dominate on top, I'm pretty sure it's going to be Ziam. So it's like, okay, maybe close-ish on minutes. One guy has more KO equity and grappling equity. And then you just go even a step further. And it's like, Herbert's 35 years old. He clearly is what he is at this point. Ziam's 26 and training at Killcliff. Like, we saw him level up huge before his last fight, which was 10 months ago. We should expect him to level up further. Like, he has all the room to get better here and massively outperform data. And Herbert has all the room to underperform the available data, So, minus 150 Ziam makes sense to me. Moving on, Andre Muniz taking on Paul Craig. This completes the club and sub parlay here. I parlayed Muniz like minus 230 with Morado. Small parlay, little square parlay here for the boys. But I guess I'll just keep it short. I think this is pretty simple. Craig, the striking maybe could be competitive, though I think I favor Herbert. The thing is,
Herbert.
God, I'm like losing my mind. I think I favor Muniz.
It's the sickness.
Yeah, it's the amoxicillin. But like how Craig has been winning fights, he's been fighting at 205 and grabbing guard subs against clunky light heavyweights. Now he's moving down to 185, which first of all, I don't understand because like that shit that he pulls up at 205 is a lot less likely to work here. And his athletic advantages will be a lot more decreased. But on top of that, he's fighting a guy in Andre Muniz who's like a legit credential jiu-jitsu guy. Like the guys he is subbing are not that. Muniz is, in my opinion, a much better wrestler here. I think Muniz is not going to be in much danger in his guard at all. And if Muniz goes to the grappling early here, I think he's just going to wipe Craig out. Even if I heard someone mention Muniz's takedown defense and potentially Craig taking him down, it's not impossible, but like I feel like Craig might be putting himself in more danger than Muniz if he takes Muniz down here. I just think Muniz is worlds better as a grappler. Like Craig's normal way of ass pulling fights, I just don't really see as being on the table here. It doesn't make much sense to me that Muniz is being similarly aligned against Paul Craig like he was against Brendan Allen. I think Muniz rolls pretty easy. What are your thoughts?
To that point too, Paul Craig's wrestling isn't even that good.
It's horrible. It's terrible.
Yeah, I mean, this guy is relying on those guard subs. His striking is no good. Wrestling, like we just touched on, no good. I think Muniz rolls. And I was even talking to you about playing the over 1.5, like evens, and I'm even staying away from that because I think it's one of those fights where like Muniz is either going to top out him, decision him, or just going to absolutely roll through him in the first round without much in between. So I'm fine passing the over.
Yeah, agreed. Like, that's kind of my thing. It's like I kind of think people assume because Craig's a jiu-jitsu guy, he can stay safe. But like I almost feel like Craig's jiu-jitsu isn't even that good. He's a guard threatener, but
what I was thinking, because everybody was chatting about the Muniz decision at plus 450, and similar to like what you were talking about with the grappling, but it's also like what dominant grapplers have been on top of Craig.
Yeah, Crut's not even a dominant grappler, and he subbed him.
Yeah,
I mean, Ankalaev and Kennedy smashed him on top till they got subbed. I mean, Krylov smashed him on top till he got subbed.
Yep.
I
bet
so
Krylov
it's like
there. Yep.
Yeah. Oh God.
Dude, it was the worst. The worst. It's the worst, man. Krilov's the worst.
Getting Paul Craig in general is the worst.
It is. That's the first time I've been Paul Craig, so hopefully not again. Hopefully not again.
Moving on, we'll start with you here, Lags. We got Andre Fili taking on Nathaniel Wood. Current price, Wood minus 190. Comeback on Fili plus 165. What are your thoughts here?
Great fight. Probably one of the more high-level fights of the card, right? I mean,
yeah.
I'd have to say top to bottom. It's interesting to see Wood blown out a bit, but like, I like the volume. I like the leg kicks. I like the wrestling of Wood. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Fili could, I guess, keep it close in the striking, but I largely think the wrestling is going to be pretty key here for Wood too as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a part of me that wants to bet Fili, but I'm probably going to pass just because I feel, especially the leg kicks are something that really kind of like bothers me a bit when looking at it. Like Fili's very, very heavy on his league leg, and Wood's going to throw those like crazy. High volume fight. I guess for me, and our boy Sean Orr, who's in the chat, mentioned this yesterday, and I kind of agree. The one thing that's kind of making me think about Fili is, he is 5 inches taller and 5 inches longer, and I do feel like that length could kind of deter some of Wood's normal volume. Like I normally would favor Wood significantly on volume, but it's going to be, I think, tougher than normal for him to get inside and get that volume off. So in that sense, I think minutes could be competitive there. And I also think, Fili probably has more equity for hurting Wood here. I'm not really sold on Wood's durability. So Fili wobbling him or dropping him, I think is pretty live. But with that said, I still favor Wood on volume pretty significantly. As I mentioned, the leg kicks. I'm kind of torn on the grappling just because, early stage Fili in his career looked, was a pretty good defensive grappler. Dennis Bermudez struggled to grapple him, and he was a much better wrestler than Nathaniel Wood is. But it has gotten worse lately. And like, while I don't put too much stock in the Bryce Mitchell fight, it's like he got mauled by Bryce Mitchell. Who fucking cares, really, at the end of the day? I do worry about the Sadiq Youssef fight, though. Getting controlled, like Sadiq's not a bad grappler, but getting controlled for 7.5 minutes by Sadiq is pretty disconcerting in the context of this fight. Different guys, and Sadiq's bigger than Wood is, but it's concerning enough that like it does make me think if anybody's going to get real top time here, it's likely going to be Wood. I don't know. I've thought about Fili, but again, Wood's in London. Fili's coming from California here. Big time change. Fans are going to be there. He's going to have judges on his side, and I think he's going to throw more volume. I'm probably going to pass it. If it blows out to like Fili plus 185, I'll probably take a poke at it. But where it is right now, I'm probably okay with just not getting involved. Moving on, we got the meatball. Molly McCann taking on Julija Stoliarenko. Current price here, McCann minus 190. Comeback Stoliarenko plus 165. I took some early Stoliarenko here, like something like plus 230. I don't know if it's terrible at the current price. It's not great. I wouldn't be like super confident in it here. I guess broad strokes. Everybody knows Stoliarenko's a live sub threat. Molly can't defend takedowns, so Stoliarenko getting her down and subbing her seems a fairly live outcome. Even if she doesn't, I think the reason I took money line instead of waiting for sub props to come out is I do kind of think Stoliarenko striking is getting underrated. Like the big assumption here is that Molly owns her on the feet, and it's like, we're really going to say Molly McCann's an elite striker now? Like, is that where we are? Is that the world that we existed? Because like no one would have said that 3 fights ago. And since then she abused Hannah Goldie and abused Luana Carolina, but even the Carolina fight was competitive at distance till she knocked her out. Nothing about that tells me she's an elite striker. And on the other side, Stoliarenko, she went 50-50 with Alexis Davis on the feet, who I would say is a better striker than Molly McCann is. She also was very competitive with Julia Avila on the feet, who I would also say is a better striker than Molly McCann and a lot more dangerous. And on top of that, Stoliarenko's 3 inches taller with a 7-inch reach advantage here. And I feel like this could, I'm not saying it will be, like I would rate McCann striking better. I mean, if I didn't, I would bet Stoliarenko fairly large, but I rate McCann striking better. But my point is, I don't think this is like minus 500 stuff on the feet. I think it's more like McCann probably looks minus 200 on the feet. It's competitive-ish. Molly's a bit cleaner. But you combine that with like the grappling upside of Stoliarenko and the finishing upside of Stoliarenko, and I just have trouble getting the minus 200 Molly here. What do you think?
So I agree with the Molly minus 200 on the feet, but Stoliarenko's wrestling I don't think is that good. I've never really thought it of to be that good.
But she's also been fighting up a weight class, in fairness.
Fair. That's fair. that's another thing we need to talk about as well. Is this fight even going to happen? Because it's 125 pounds. Because she's never made 125 pounds in her career ever.
I am
ever.
skeptical.
She's largely fought at 135 and 145 pounds her entire career. So that's really the big question. That 100%, we're going to be down to 14 fights. We're going to lose this fight, John. It's going to happen.
I think. I mean, what would you actually set the odds of us losing this fight? Because I have an idea of what I would set it at. What would you say?
See, I don't know. Because I would just say like a minus 150 and be like, oh yeah, sure. But
that we lose it. Idea. I was gonna say I would say plus one.
Yes.
I was gonna say plus 150 we lose it. But the fact that we're saying either somewhere between 40 and 60% that Stoliarenko misses weight and we lose this fight is telling, I think.
Yes. And then on top of the fact, I don't think Stoliarenko's cardio is the best either.
No,
if she can't get her wrestling going. So I get why the under's so chalked up as well with most of the finishing upside like that. But all in general, just to stay away from me.
I actually was thinking about that. The goes the distance might not be that bad. Like just because how high? I know Stoliarenko got finished in her last fight, but it's like, dude, Chelsea Chandler, that lady is like. She is a large woman, whereas Molly is not, like Chandler just fought at 145 last week, like I feel like that might be getting not looked at close enough.
I think Stoliarenko's a bit of a quitter too. When the going gets tough, I think Molly's going to.
Yeah.
Probably
what Sean said. Did you see it in the chat?
I did. Yes, I did.
Sean Orr threw this out. Shout out to him. And it's kind of interesting. Molly McCann, sub 2, sub 3. I think it's like plus 3,600, sub 2, plus 5,000, sub 3. And as you mentioned, she is a bit of a quitter. And Molly, believe it or not, has attempted 4 submissions in the UFC. She hasn't subbed anybody yet, but.
So that's why I would never play a GTD in like a fight like this. And that's why I don't mind the stabs with Sean, because like if she does quit, maybe Molly just gets on her back, rear naked choke, boom.
$20 at 50 to 1?
Yeah.
Or is it 500? No, it's 50 to 1. 50 to 1. Yeah. $20, 50 to 1. That's not bad. I think that might be worth a poke. But moving on. Main event of the evening. Tom Aspinall, Marcin Tybura. What are your thoughts, Lags?
Man. Another underwhelming main event, I feel like. I feel like there's not many angles to talk about because I feel like the two main talking points in Aspinall, like that we don't know a ton about, would be the durability and the cardio.
Yeah.
Don't think the durability is going to get tested here, and I don't think the cardio is going to be tested. Even if we do get past, say, 7.5, 10 minutes, I think he's still going to out cardio Tybura. Like Tybura is not a guy who's going to outpace guys unless you're like literally death gassed. So I think Aspinall finishing him in the first 2 rounds is pretty live, probably even the first round. But again, I don't think there's any playable angles here. The under 1.5's minus 180 pretty much. So
yeah. I can't. I mean, I'm sure most people are probably expecting me to make a case for Tybura here. I'm not going to. Honestly, I was kind of hoping we'd get a bunch of sharp Tybura money to maybe drop it to like Aspinall minus 300. Just because, look, I'm with you. Like the durability and the cardio, they're big questions for Aspinall, but we've seen him carry power deep into round 2. And I just look at Tybura and like, I love Marcin. He's my guy. I've bet him a ton, but like Marcin is not a great wrestler. Like he's very good on top, but he doesn't have the best level changes. He's okay in the clinch, but like we saw with the Volkov fight, Volkov's not a great defensive wrestler, and Tybura couldn't really get him down in that fight. He just kind of struggles with guys who are bigger and more physical than he is. And Aspinall is a lot bigger than he is and a lot more physical than he is. So, like, I don't see many paths to Tybura getting him down early. Now, if he does extend it into round 3 and later, I do think Tybura taking over and winning this fight is in play, provided Aspinall's cardio is bad. But again, that's something we don't know. His cardio could be good for all we know. We have no idea. And while they're at rage early in this fight, I think Aspinall is going to fucking tee off on him. Tybura, again, I love Tybura, but he's fucking easy to hit and he's slow as shit, man. And Aspinall is large and very fucking fast and very fucking accurate. I think he's going. And so, like, I was taping it and just looking at him, like, I feel like Aspinall hurts him. Like, for Tybura to get to that point where he could really push Aspinall's cardio, I feel like he's going to have to go through being wobbled or dropped like multiple times early in this fight. I think that's a very fucking live outcome. And yeah, so it's like, I think Aspinall KO is a very high number and early is a very high number in this fight. And, that's even assuming on the back end, Aspinall gasses out. If he doesn't gas out bad in the back end, that number could be close to like 70, 75%, you know? So I honestly don't even think the KO minus 150 is horrible for Aspinall in this fight. I know I've seen people make the sub take, but like, dude, Fabricio Verdum didn't sub Marcin Tybura. Like, no one subs Tybura. I think sub takes are just donating personally.
Yeah, and on top of that, it's plus 250.
Yeah, I don't see much.
Yeah.
Dude, I mean, Aspinall subbed Arlovsky, who Marcos Rogerio de Lima subbed, and he subbed Volkov with a fucking Americano. Like, I don't
that was
think
a quick job. The
Yeah.
Aspinall, Arlovsky, he was barely under the neck, and it was just...
Yeah, he was out quick. But yeah, I mean, I look at it and it's just like, I wanted to find the angle from Marcin, but it's like, if you want to get money on Marcin, the odds are very strong that he is going to get pounded to a pulp early in this fight. Like, you can probably bet him plus 1,000 after the first round if he gets through it, you know? Why go in at plus 300 or plus 350 early, you know?
The only way, I would say the only way you somehow are like missing out on it is if that injury, if he just re-injures his leg or knee in that first round, and then it happens. But then
it's like, who fucking cares, you know?
Right, yeah. Yep.
Also, speaking of which, let's briefly talk about. I actually thought, what do you think of the KO line? I've been thinking about betting.
Oh, I thought you were briefly going to talk about the injury. We were going to talk about the Curtis Blades.
Yeah, we are going to talk about that in a
Curtis
second.
Blades money line, never in doubt. But what do I think about the KO prop? Again, I probably would play the KO prop at minus 150. It's not bad.
I'm thinking about it. I don't think it's crazy. I'm hoping FanDuel gives us something a bit better than that. I don't know. Do they have it up yet?
Oh, they definitely do.
Do they? They've been like really late.
No, they had it up earlier. I could have swore. I don't know if I looked here or not, if it was minus 165 or not, but
like better than minus 150. I think is kind of interesting, honestly. And I hate playing minus props, but
especially KO props.
I know, but I don't really like. I guess club sub's possible, but I really think he's just much more likely to knock him dead. Yeah, not bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's talk about the Blades fight briefly, because honestly, at the time, I was like, man, it's such a bummer because people are going to say Aspinall, like, oh, he got hurt. Like, how can you say it's value? And Curtis was going to wrestle fuck him. And then it's like you watch Curtis not wrestle Chris Dawkins and not wrestle Sergey Pavlovich, and it's like, man, I do not feel good about how that fight might have gone if he did not tear his ACL. Honestly, what do you think?
I will add on top of that though. Based off of the Dawkins fight in general, like I think where people in general underrate Curtis's striking, like I think in open space, I think he could hurt Tom. Like I think it's not like out of question. Yeah. But would I feel great about it at like pick 'em, like where we had it? I don't know.
Like if they book that tomorrow, would you feel great about Curtis wrestling?
No.
And if you don't feel
based off the data that we just recently got, no, I would say no. At the time when we made the bet, yes.
Like if you don't feel great about him wrestling, you can't click that number, you know?
Yeah.
Like I agree with you. I think Curtis's striking is better than he gets credit for. But I mean, Aspinall is so fast for heavyweight, man. You know, so we'll see.
But see then the big point on top of that, like we were talking about with the Tybura fight, if he doesn't get him out of there in like the first 7-10 minutes, Blades could take him down the stretch. He can survive that beating.
Yeah, that is true. And I think Blades is more likely to survive that kind of punishment than Tybura is.
And come back from it, yeah.
I really just have this feeling Marcin's fucked. Like, obviously, look, if he gets to round 3, he's going to ask some big questions, and I wouldn't be shocked if he takes over. But I think him getting to round 3 is going to be very, very difficult.
Did you see, real quick, last thing I want to add, did you see the video of Tom and Tybura? They were facing off, and they were speaking Polish. He was speaking Polish to him a little bit.
No.
Yeah, Tom speaks Polish. Yeah, it was funny, and they were about to like face off against each other, and he was saying in Polish, he was like, "Oh, you look a little slimmer. You've been training." he's like, yeah, well, yeah.
I appreciate an educated gentleman.
Yes,
but yeah, guys, I mean that'll do it tonight. Big pay-per-view next week. UFC 291. That'll be fun.
We have a guest for sure.
We'll get a guest on here. We will find one. But yeah, we'll be back 7 p.m. Eastern next week. Guys, if you like the show, drop a like and subscribe. You can find Lags on Twitter at Danny_Lags, myself at MMA Falks. Hit us up anytime you want. You want to talk fights or whatever. We're always down to chat. Good luck on your bets this weekend. Hopefully we turn the fuking ship around this week, right? It's going to come one of the next couple of weeks, but it's got to come.
Duncan Jamal Pogues week.
There it is. Please. Take it easy, everyone. Good night.